My name is Tommy Anderson, and I want to talk about going from the high of doing a job I always wanted to do to the low of being disabled and unable to work to rebuilding myself and becoming a success again. When I graduated from high school, I had joined the Army, and I used to watch the television show Emergency. And while watching it, I always said, that's what I want to do when I get back. I want to be on the fire department. I want to be a paramedic. When I got out of the military, I tried numerous times to get on. I found it to be very competitive. I found out it wasn't going to be as easy as I thought, but each time, I think it took me 5 times to try to get onto a large fire department. And on either the 4th or 5th time, I was just successful. And I think it made it all the more worthwhile to me, because I really showed that I wanted the job, and they knew I wanted it. They remembered me coming back. So I started my career as a firefighter. I went through the emergency medical training. I worked for years on the ambulance. I worked on then on a engine company, which is the group that puts out the fires, and then transferred to a truck company where I drove the ladder truck, aerial ladder. I found that I've always been an empathetic person, and I had always kind of went out of my way to help somebody if they needed help with something, or they needed a ride, or that type of thing. And I saw it as another adventure, which was just a continuation of what I had experienced in the military. And I liked the fact that the fire department was kind of a military structure. I like a structured environment where you know what your job roles are, you know what you're supposed to do. And I also like the fact that every day was different, every hour was different. You could go from perfectly being bored to being totally frightened. And at the end of the day, I liked being the one there that could help somebody where nobody else could help them. And I used to pride myself on being a good paramedic and being able to assess things that maybe somebody else missed. It doesn't mean I was the best in the world, but I loved my job, and I knew it was the one job I could do well. I was on a promotion list for lieutenant, and I would be out here in California, it's a captain, but you're in charge of the fire crew at the fire station. And I had been working in an acting capacity as that. And when you get to that position, they want to give you some experience before you get promoted. Well, I had 2 things that happened to me within the span of about 3 months. And one was we had a really bad high-rise fire, and I was driving the aerial ladder truck, and we got there, and we were it was a apartment complex, an older complex, and they wanted us to go and start searching from the top to see if anybody was trapped upstairs or whatever. So we went up and got on to the 4th floor and started to go in. And as we went into the building, there was an explosion, and everybody that was on my crew was gone. And what had happened is the floor had given way, and they all had gone down into the fire. And I was blowing back against a railing, and I banged up my knee, and I had no way of telling anybody down below what had happened. And I had thought everybody was dead, because how could you survive something like that? And I could look down and see everybody working on the fire down below, and I tried yelling, but there was so much noise. There was a helicopter overhead. And so what I did is I took my helmet off and I threw it like a frisbee at one of the engineers on one of the fire engine, and it landed on his foot. And he looked up at me, and I was waving, and I yelled, "Collapse, my crew's gone," so they could start a rescue operation on below. And I said, I'm going to need help getting down, because I banged up my knee. So they had a ladder there. They helped me down. And by the time I got down, They put me into an ambulance. They were going to take me to have my knee looked at the hospital. And at that time, they told me my crew had miraculously survived. And by, I like to think of an act of God, where they were thrown away from the fire rather than into the fire. And so they just had minor injuries, but we were all taken to the hospital. And that messed with my mind quite a bit. I had a lot of nightmares over that. All I could see is 1 second they're there and the next second they're gone. And I've seen a lot of bad things on my years in the fire department, especially being a paramedic and that. And I've always managed to deal with them. I always managed to push stuff aside, but it's like everything came bubbling up at that time. I was dealing with that, and then there was one day I was off, and they asked me if I could work an overtime shift at another station. And I said, sure, because I needed somebody to drive the fire engine there. So I took it. And that day we were going on another fire when we were in an accident. And when we had that accident, the driver's seat broke and threw me around the cab. And what ended up is I ended up having a broken neck and a broken back. And I went through multiple surgeries, a lot of rehab, a lot of psychological issues with that, a lot of nightmares, concussion. I mean, you name it. It was like, and then being told I'd never go back to work again. It was like I was just at the bottom of an abyss that I didn't know what to do with. And it was the start of a number of years of darkness for me, of surgeries, of questioning, did I do something wrong, self-doubt. And if it wasn't for a particular nurse who was my case manager, I probably would not have pulled out of that, and I'm not sure what would have happened. She made a difference in my life. I mean, everything fell apart. I ended up getting divorced. I had lost my house. You know, a lot of things that happened. All of a sudden, the loss of income and fighting court battles, fighting for insurance and things like that. It was just like a never-ending battle. And this one nurse actually we became very good friends, helped me through it all. It was April of 1993, and I went into the fire station. I was 42 years old. I was driving the aerial ladder. That was my job. And my other job, which I coveted and other people didn't mind, I was the fire station cook. So I had the best of both worlds. I could drive my fire truck and I could cook meals for everybody. And everybody was always happy with that. And where I lived in the Midwest, in April, you can go from having a summer day to a blizzard. And that day, it was extremely quiet. It was extremely gray outside. We had a winter storm warning that at some time we might get a storm. And so we just had this feeling. I just said that we had a new kid there who was a new rookie. And he said, boy, it sure is quiet. And I said to him, you never say that. Because the minute you say that, we're going to be so busy, everybody will hate you. And so the day went on, we didn't have any calls. We didn't have any calls, which is really unusual. And it was like 10 o'clock at night rolled around, and it started snowing. And at that time, what we do is we put chains on all the fire trucks because not knowing how much snow could come, the only way we're going to get through some of the streets are to have chains on the tires. So we did that, and as soon as we were done with that, we turned in for the night. And I was talking to a lieutenant I'd been with him for years, and I'd said, I just got a feeling tonight, something about tonight. And he just said, I know. So well, went in to go to bed, and for some reason, I woke up about 2 in the morning, and I thought, the alarms are going to go off. And they did, but they weren't for us. They were for a downtown 3 or 4 stations downtown for a high-rise fire. And I knew the street, I know the city, I worked there for a long time. And I thought, well, I'm gonna get up. I got dressed, I went out, I checked the fire truck, I went over, and Lieutenant was up too. We were both looking at the map. And I said, you know, that building's a terrible building. It was built in the 1860s. And if they have a really good fire there, we're gonna be there. And so we were looking at the map going, okay, we'll go in this way if they call for our aerial truck. And being a driver, you have to know the streets of the city. And I said, oh, we'll have to go this way because it's a one-way street. We'll go in this way, this way. So we kind of pre-planned it. And sure enough, tones went off for a third alarm, and we were responding to it. And pulled out of the fire station, and it was about 6-7 inches of snow everywhere. And it was really pretty. And as we're going down the street towards the center of the city, we could see a glow in the sky, which is never a good thing. And it was so crystal clear, cold and snow. The red lights and white lights were bouncing off the snow and all over. And I said, you know, if we weren't going on a fire, this would be really pretty. But we got to the fire, and they told us that it was they didn't know how many families were in the building, and we needed to go to the top apartment. It was four-story building, wood structure, built, like I said, built in the 1860s, and to go up on the patio and go in through a patio door and look at the top floor. There were 4 apartments on the top floor, and make sure nobody was in there, because in a fire like that, the heat and the smoke rises and it can incapacitate somebody in no time. And it was up to us to do the rescue and do a search and clear the floor. And if it was clear, we'd go down to the next floor, and then somebody was supposed to be on the bottom floor doing the same thing going up. Well, as soon as it got to the door, it was locked. And Lieutenant says to me, "This is your realm," because I was really known good for busting down doors. And I had what we kind of called a Halligan tool. And I said, "Sure, just stand back." And I just took me one big pop and I knocked that door wide open. And at that point, we go in and do a search, and the lieutenant and the firefighter, one of our experienced firefighters, they did a right-hand search. They went in the door. He says, "We're going to go right." And then they said, the lieutenant told the rookie, says, "You go with Tom. You guys do the left-hand search, and don't lose touch of him." And he was in front of me, and I was holding on to his ankle on his boot. And as soon as we got in, the other guys went in. As soon as we got in, all of a sudden his foot was gone. I was still halfway in the door. There was a big kaboom. His foot was gone. I was blowing backwards into a railing. I banged my knee up, and my mask came off. My air mask came off. I wasn't sure what happened, and I crawled back up there and I looked, and all I could see is fire down below, and the floor was gone for the whole top apartment complex. And it was like, oh my God, they're all dead. And I tried to yell to people down below what happened so they could start a rescue. And they couldn't hear me because of the noise on the fire ground. With all the pumps going and helicopters overhead and things like that, there was just too much noise. So I took my helmet off and I flung it like a frisbee, and it landed at the feet of the engineer of engine number 4. And he looked up at me and I said, "Floor collapse, my crew's gone." And I said, "I'm injured, I can't get down." So what they did then is he went in and blasted the air horn on the fire engine, which means structure collapse, and relayed the fact that Ladder 9's crew had gone down in the fire, so they would start a rescue. They would send a rescue team in to look for them. Well, they sent somebody up to help me down. They got me into the ambulance, and they told me that they were looking for my crew. And I got out of the ambulance and I started walking back well, kind of limping back. And this one safety officer says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I got to go find my guys." He says, "You're going back in the ambulance and I'm ordering you. What good are you going to do? You can't hardly walk." So begrudgingly, I went back and they started an IV on me and gave me some morphine, and I was kind of fading out. And then I heard him say that everybody on my crew is alive, but they're all injured and they're going to take them to different hospitals. We had 5 trauma centers in the city, and they were taking us each to a different one so that they wouldn't overload the hospitals. So that's that image stuck with me forever. And the last thing, I remember on the way to the hospital is seeing the guys go away and thinking they were dead. And it's an image I couldn't get out of my head. And that haunted me. It still haunts me. Every now and then I wake up, even though they were okay. It still haunts me because it was so surreal, so sudden. And it just shows you how in the instant of a second, everything can change in everyone's life. A few months later, I was off work in October of '93, and I got a call asking if I could work an overtime shift at our fire station number 3. They needed a driver for the fire engine. And one of my best friends on the fire department was the lieutenant there that day, and I said, "Sure, I'll do it." I said, I'll go there because we'll goof off and have a good time, stuff like that. And so I went into work, and everything went great. We had a busy day. It was really a pretty busy day. Nothing too big until that evening when we had a fire call with a report of a person trapped. So we were supposed to be the first engine in, which means we have to get there. We have to set up, get in there, and go in and do an immediate rescue before anyone else can get there. Well, about a mile from the fire scene, we were in an accident, and there was a failure in the cab of the fire engine I was driving, of the seat, which broke free, which it's not supposed to do. And it bounced me around inside the cabin and cab of the truck and ended up breaking my neck and my lower back, and providing me with a concussion also. And I had, that day changed my life forever. I remember and it wasn't against another structure. There was actually was a rather big pothole that we didn't even know was there. And we all know about potholes. And the way the truck hit it, it broke the front axle of the fire engine, which subsequently broke the seat. And the minute my head hit the cab roof, I literally saw stars. That's the only time. I've had several concussions on the fire department. It's the only time I really saw stars. And everything was spinning around. And I couldn't stand up because it was, I was so unsteady and dizzy. And the fact that I didn't find out until the next day that I had a fracture in my neck and my back. I was in a lot of pain. I had arm pain, and somebody from the city called me up. I went home. I was going to take some Tylenol, lay down, and someone from the city called me up and said, "You got to get checked out." And so I went in, and I saw they did an MRI, and they found the fracture, and referred me to neurosurgery, who took it over from there. But it was at that point, of course, my first question is, will I get better? And they said that we don't know. We don't know. It depends on how the surgery goes. And I would have to have a couple surgeries. The most serious one was my neck, which they had to stabilize. And they said I would be in a neck immobilizer for 3 months. And then when that was done, they were going to evaluate the surgery on the lower back. And so so they said they would make the determination after that. Well, it was after that that they had said that there's no way that you're going to be able to return to work. And I had hoped that maybe I could get a non-firefighting job at the fire department and in training or something like that, but that wasn't to be. The city didn't want to take the liability of having somebody who was injured like that still on the payroll. So I had to, I was left at a loss. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was kept on disability. I was still on the payroll for another 3.5, 4 years, because I had other surgeries. And all the time, they had said that it would be better for me to turn in my resignation so I could get my retirement than to let it drag out. And I was really upset about that. It's like, why do I have to resign? And it's just a lot of things were going through my head, and I was just really going into a dark place, and I was having nightmares. PTSD rolled up really bad. Every past trauma, the fire with the collapse, different accidents I've been on, different rescues I've done, everything started flooding back in my nightmares. And I was living it all the time, and ended up going into a therapy program with a psychiatrist to help me deal with it, who was, it was pretty successful. They had tried me on a bunch of different drugs, and I absolutely hated them. And the doctor just finally said that you need to do something different. Drugs aren't going to help you. The only one's going to be able to help you is yourself. And the nurse that I was saying that I had met, who was my case manager, had said that I can see you doing something creative, being an author, doing something. You've got so much experience and knowledge behind you. You need to consider reinventing yourself and starting a new career. I realize everybody has issues. I just didn't expect to be with all these other people. I was probably selfish. I wanted to talk about my experiences and compare them to other people's experiences. And first responders have a way of crying on each other's shoulders to make us feel better. And initially when I was there, I was listening to some of the people talk. One of the gentlemen there was talking about how his wife henpecks him. A woman was there talking about how her mother always loved her sister better, and things like that. And everybody's going around talking, and they said, and what's one of the things that always keeps up coming in your mind? And I said, well, there was the night that we had 4 or 5 high schoolers on their prom, and they were in a convertible, and they were in an accident, and they were all decapitated, and I can't get that out of my head. And everybody just went, oh my God. And the counselor that was going there goes, that's a little too rough for this situation. And I said, it's a little too rough for this situation. That's my problem. I think that's pretty serious for me. And they said, if you can't tone it down, maybe you don't belong here. So I thought, okay, it was part of the treatment process that I needed with my workers' comp. So I thought, okay, I get it. I'll just shut up and show up. I won't say anything. I won't contribute. And that really upset me even more, because it was like, why am I here if I can't express what went on? And it's hard to relate to these people. I know their problems are big to them, but mine's big to me too. But I'll tell you, actually, as time went on, I probably got more empathetic towards them and was listening to them more. So in the long run, it did help. It did help me talking with them. However, throughout the whole process, I was very guarded on what I would share, because I knew that they wouldn't be able to handle it. So I kind of had to learn myself there to measure what I was feeling and what I was thinking. So in that respect, it probably helped me. The next next thing after that really helped was I got a call out of the blue from the county veterans office telling me that I hadn't used all my GI Bill, and if I didn't use it, I was going to lose what's left. And I'm going, I didn't realize I had anything left. And I had stayed in the reserve after I got out of the Army, and they said, you have your Desert Storm GI Bill. So I went back to school and went to grad school. And that's what really turned me around. It got me out of the house where I was by myself. I was divorced, I was by myself. I wasn't doing anything. It got me out, got me going to classes. I got meeting people again. I all of a sudden came out of my shell. And it was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to totally dive into the creative process. And I want to somehow work in film or video or still photography. I want to do something like that. And I was in the Midwest, and I thought there's three places I can go to do that. And it was New York, Chicago, or LA. Well, I was living and working by Chicago. That was out. New York's also got snow. That was out. So LA was for me. So in 2009, I sold the house that I had. I sold all my property and shipped my truck to Riverside, California. And I had a motorhome. I took my 2 dogs and me, and we headed out here. I had no idea what I was going to do, but somehow I was going to get into the entertainment industry. One of the things I did when I got to California is I started working with some veterans groups to help counseling and working with other vets on PTSD. And since I had started writing, before I had written my books, I had done some magazine articles, and we had some programs that were to help vets with PTSD to write and to put their stories onto print and to get it out there. And it was a very successful program, and I became involved with that. I took the class. I was recommended to go to it. They said you can do more than write magazine articles. You can probably write a book or something. So I went to that, and basically I learned my skills for writing a book. And I was really blessed. A lot of hard work. A lot of people put their time and energy into helping me and teaching me. I ended up becoming one of the people to help run the program after a few years, and that's how I also continued. I worked with another group called Veterans in Media and Entertainment, and we did the same thing, and we helped vets get into entertainment in television, music, writing, you name it, the whole gambit. The best thing I could do was get out and get involved and start doing things. And the best thing that happened to me was going back to school. Now I was 48 maybe, going back to college again and taking grad classes. And I thought, wow, this is great. And I was surprised at how many other people who were in the same age range who were doing that. And I started socializing, started meeting up with people, going out and doing things. And I found that, I wasn't really isolated. I was doing it to myself. And I just really needed to be out there. And I had to actually create new friends, because I found out one of the things that isolated me, and I think it's probably true with anybody with PTSD or anybody recovering from something, the people closest to you when that happened are the ones that tend to walk away from you. And I found out later from some of the people I had worked with on the fire department and things like that, I wasn't invited to some things because, one, they assumed that I wouldn't go, or they assumed it'd be too difficult for me, or they didn't want to hear what I went through because it might affect their own safety feelings. And I was very surprised at that, but I found out it was not that unusual. And so when I went out, I became more of an extrovert, and now I am. I found out in having this career, you have to be. I talk all the time. I do interviews. I never thought that, especially after writing a book or getting an award, I'd be speaking in front of 400 or 500 people. I never ever thought that would happen, but it did, and I adapted, and I found out I can do it. And as I tell a lot of people, is you can do it too. You just have to have faith in yourself. Don't listen to the naysayers, because some of them mean well. They're afraid for you and they don't want to see you get hurt. But some of them project their own fears upon you. And I saw that when I decided to make the move to California. It was, I proved them wrong, which was kind of satisfying in a way, and that helped boost my feelings. Right now, I do have dreams every once in a while. They never go away, but they're not harmful like they used to be. They're not depressing like they used to be. They're maybe a remembrance of where you came from, because you never need to. You should never forget where you came from or what made you who you are today, because that's all part of your story. But I've been able to deal with it. I've been able to talk to people. I've been able to talk at different counseling sessions to help people, to talk to people. You know, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and you just need to hold the course. I got to a point where I didn't trust people, and that was my own insecurities. And now I found that I don't have an issue. I have so many friends. I have friends that I never thought I would be friends with. If be them celebrities or whoever. I mean, it's just, I just found that people tend to gravitate to me because I'm real, I'm original. I don't BS. You know, if they ask me my opinion, I'll tell them. But I'm never mean. I don't believe in being mean. I work with animals. I rescue animals. I help rescue animals. I found that as a great relief. In 2012, I went to Colorado to help rescue horses at the Waldo Canyon fire. I do fundraisers for shelters. Both my dogs are rescues. I totally believe in that. So I believe in giving back in many different ways. I always try to. One of the biggest surprises I ever had, and who would have ever thought, is one of the projects I got to work on was a PBS special on PTSD for military, and we got an Emmy. I never would have thought that behind my desk I have an Emmy sitting on a shelf behind my desk, by my computer. It's like, where in the world would this ever happen? It wouldn't have happened if I wouldn't have decided to make a life choice.